What do you do when the world turns against you, when every path feels blocked, and even the people who once stood beside you are no longer there? Most people break long before reaching that point. But there was a man who stood firm when everything around him collapsed, a man whose strength did not come from what he had, but from something far deeper. This was a time in the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that many would not be able to endure. He'd already spent years calling his people to truth, inviting them with patience, with wisdom, with sincerity. Yet instead of acceptance, he was met with rejection. Instead of support, he faced mockery. The very people he grew up among, the people who knew his honesty, his character, his truthfulness, turned against him. They insulted him, accused him, and tried to silence his message in every way they could. But even in all of that, he was not alone. There were still people who stood by him. There was still comfort in his home. There was still support that gave him strength to continue. And sometimes that small support is what allows a person to carry even the heaviest burdens. Then suddenly that support was taken away. His beloved wife, Khadija radiallahu anhu, the one who believed in him when no one else did, the one who comforted him in his hardest moments, passed away. She was not just a wife. She was his peace, his reassurance, his emotional strength. Losing her was not just losing a person. It was losing a source of comfort that had always been there. And not long after that, another loss followed. His uncle, Abu Talib, the man who protected him from the physical harm of Quraysh, also passed away. Even though Abu Talib did not accept Islam, he stood as a shield, a barrier between the Prophet ﷺ and those who wanted to harm him. With his death, that protection disappeared. Now everything has changed. The same Makkah that once held at least some level of safety became a place of open hostility. The insults became harsher. The threats became more serious. The rejection became heavier. There was no longer a protective figure standing between him and those who opposed him. Imagine that moment, losing emotional support and physical protection almost at the same time. Standing alone in a city that now openly rejects you, continuing a mission that seems to bring more pain than ease. This was not just hardship. This was a level of pressure that would break most people, and yet he did not stop. He did not give up. He did not turn back. He did not say, "This is too much." Instead, he continued, carrying a message that the world around him refused to accept. But here is the question. Where does that kind of strength come from? Because this was not normal. This was not the kind of resilience people are used to. This was something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface. And what was about to happen next would push that strength even further. After losing the two people who gave him comfort and protection, the world around Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam began to feel heavier than ever before. The rejection he had faced earlier was painful, but now it carried a different weight. Before, there was still a place to return to, a home filled with support, a presence that reminded him he was not alone. Now, that space is gone. What remained was a mission and a silence that followed him wherever he went. He continued to call his people, just as he always had. He did not change his message. He did not soften the truth to make it easier for them to accept. He spoke with clarity, with sincerity, inviting them towards something that could save them. But instead of listening, they pushed him further away. They mocked him openly, called him names, accused him of things that did not reflect who he was. The same man they once trusted was now treated like a stranger among his own people. There is a different kind of pain in being rejected by those who know you. Strangers can hurt you, but when it comes from your own community, it cuts deeper. Every word carries more weight. Every insult feels heavier. Because it is not just about disagreement. It is about being misunderstood, being pushed away by the very people who should have recognized the truth in you. And yet, he continued, this is where loneliness becomes real. Not just physical loneliness, but emotional isolation. To carry a message that others refuse to hear, to stand firm when everyone else steps back, to remain steady when there is no visible support. This is not something easy. Most people rely on encouragement, on validation, on some sign that what they are doing matters, but he moved forward without any of that. There is a powerful contrast here. He was bringing guidance, yet receiving rejection. He was offering truth, yet facing hostility. He was trying to save them, yet they saw him as someone to push away. This is what makes the burden so heavy, because the intention was pure, but the response was painful, and still he did not stop. Day after day he continued to call, to invite, to speak. Not because it was easy, but because it was right. This is what separates ordinary strength from something greater. Ordinary strength depends on results. When things go well, people continue. When they do not, they slow down or give up. But his strength was not tied to results. It was tied to purpose. But even purpose does not remove pain. There were moments when the weight of everything became overwhelming, moments where the rejection felt constant, where the loneliness settled deeper, where the path ahead looked uncertain. And yet, even in those moments, he did not allow himself to turn away from what he was sent to do. This is something many people struggle with. When life becomes difficult, when people reject you, when things do not go your way, the natural reaction is to step back, to protect yourself, to avoid further pain. But he did the opposite. He stepped forward. He continued, even when there was no sign that things would change. Because his strength came from somewhere else. It was not from people. It was not from circumstances. It was from something deeper, something that did not depend on acceptance or rejection. And just when it seemed that the situation could not become more difficult, something happened that would push his endurance to a level few could imagine. Because what happened in Taif was not just rejection, it was pain in a form that would test even the strongest hearts. When the pressure in Makkah became unbearable, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not retreat into silence. He did not give up on his mission. Instead, he looked for another place, another group of people who might listen, who might accept the truth, who might offer support. And so he set out toward Taif. This journey was not easy. It was not a short walk or a simple visit. It was a deliberate effort, a step forward taken with hope. I hope that maybe, just maybe, the people of Taif would be different, that they would listen with open hearts, that they would see what others had refused to see. But what awaited him there was something far more painful than rejection. When he reached Taif, he presented his message with sincerity, just as he always did. He spoke to their leaders, invited them toward truth, toward something that could benefit them in this life and the next. But instead of acceptance, he was met with ridicule. They did not just reject him quietly. They responded with disrespect, with mockery, with words meant to humiliate. And then it became worse. They turned the people against him. Children, servants, and those who followed the crowd were sent after him. Stones were thrown, not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Each step he took was met with pain. Each movement forward was met with another blow. The ground beneath him became marked with his blood. His body was wounded, his feet injured, his strength slowly fading. Imagine that moment. A man who came with a message of mercy, being chased out with cruelty. A man who only wanted to guide, being treated as someone to harm. The physical pain was intense, but the emotional weight behind it was even heavier. Because this was not just about being hurt, it was about being rejected in the most harsh and humiliating way. Eventually, he found a place to stop, a moment to breathe, a space where the stones no longer followed him. And in that moment, the reality of everything settled in. The journey, the rejection, the pain, the loneliness, all of it came together at once. This was a point where most people would break. But something incredible happened next. It is reported that an angel was sent, offering him something that most people would not hesitate to accept. The mountains surrounding Taif could be brought together, crushing the people who had harmed him. Justice, immediate and overwhelming, was within reach. Think about that. After everything he had just endured, after the pain, the humiliation, the injustice, he was given the chance to respond with power. But he refused. Not because he could not take it, not because he did not feel the pain, but because his heart was guided by something greater than reaction. He said that perhaps from their descendants would come people who would worship Allah. This is where the true strength becomes clear. It is easy to respond to pain with anger. It is natural to want justice when you have been wronged. But to choose mercy in that moment, to think beyond the present pain, to hope for something better from those who hurt you, that is not ordinary strength. That is something far beyond what most people can reach. There is a deep contrast here. He had the opportunity to destroy, yet he chose to forgive. He had the right to respond, yet he chose patience. He was in pain, yet he thought of their future, not his revenge. This is what makes this moment unforgettable, because it forces a question. What kind of strength allows someone to respond like that? Because this was not just resilience. This was something deeper, something hidden, something that carried him through moments that would break others. And that is where the real answer begins to appear. After everything he had endured, the loss, the rejection, the humiliation, and the physical pain, a question begins to rise naturally. What was it that kept Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam standing when everything around him was pushing him down? Because this was not ordinary strength. This was not the kind of resilience that comes from personality or experience. This was something deeper, something rooted beyond the visible. His strength was not physical. It was not based on numbers, support, or control. In fact, at that point, he had very little of those things. He stood without protection, without widespread acceptance, without comfort. And yet, he did not collapse. This is where the real secret begins to reveal itself. His strength came from his connection with Allah. This connection was not occasional. It was constant. It was not dependent on circumstances. It did not increase only when things were easy and disappeared when things became difficult. It remained steady through everything. And because of that, even when the world around him became unstable, his heart did not. There is a powerful contrast here. From the outside, he appeared broken, wounded, rejected, alone. But on the inside, he was anchored. His heart was connected to something that could not be shaken by people or circumstances. This is what most people do not see. They see the pain, but they do not see the source of strength behind it. After the incident of Taif, in a moment of deep vulnerability, he turned to Allah with a dua. Not a dua filled with anger or frustration, but one filled with humility and honesty. In meaning, he expressed his weakness, his lack of resources, and how he felt in the eyes of people. But even in that moment, he did not lose his respect for Allah. He did not question the wisdom behind what had happened. Instead, he showed complete submission. This is what makes that moment so powerful, because it shows that strength is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to remain connected to Allah even when you feel weak. It is the ability to express your vulnerability without losing your trust. It is the balance between acknowledging hardship and maintaining faith. Many people think that being strong means hiding pain, acting unaffected, or pretending everything is fine. But this is not real strength. Real strength is being honest with yourself, recognizing your limits, and still choosing to rely on Allah. This is exactly what the Prophet ﷺ demonstrated. His trust, his tawakkul, was not just words. It was visible in his actions, in his patience, in his refusal to give up. He did not depend on people for validation. He did not look for strength in acceptance. His strength came from knowing that Allah sees everything, that every hardship has a purpose, and that no effort goes unnoticed. This is why he continued. Even when there was no sign of success, even when rejection seemed constant, even when the pain felt overwhelming, he kept moving forward, not because it was easy, but because his connection with Allah gave him the ability to do so. And this is the secret that many people overlook. They look at the results, the victories, the later success, but they forget the foundation that made all of that possible. It was not a strategy. It was not numbers. It was not external support. It was faith. A faith that did not break under pressure. A faith that remained steady in the face of pain. A faith that turned hardship into strength instead of weakness. And this is what truly kept him standing, not what was around him, but what was within him. After the pain of rejection, after the wounds of Taif, after the loneliness that settled deep into his life, something began to change. Not immediately in the way people expect, not through sudden acceptance or instant ease, but through something far greater, something that would show that no moment of pain goes unseen by Allah. Because when the earth closed in on him, the heavens opened. It is known that during this difficult period, Allah honored Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with a journey unlike anything experienced before. A journey that was not bound by distance, not limited by time, and not constrained by the physical world. From the earth to the heavens, he was taken in a way that no ordinary human could comprehend. Think about the contrast. Just days before, he was walking through Taif, wounded, rejected, chased away by people. Now he was being elevated beyond the limits of this world, honored in a way that no rejection could ever take away. This is how Allah responds, not always by removing the hardship immediately, but by showing that the hardship was never the end of the story. This moment was not just a miracle, it was a reminder that even when people reject you, Allah sees you. Even when the world closes its doors, Allah can open doors you cannot imagine. Even when you feel alone, you are not forgotten. During this journey, he experienced things beyond human understanding. He was shown signs, given honor, and brought closer in a way that reflected his true status. The same man who was mocked on earth was now honored in the heavens. The same man who was rejected by people was now elevated by Allah. This is a powerful contrast. Rejection by creation does not reduce your value when you are connected to the Creator. In fact, sometimes those moments of rejection are what lead to greater elevation. What feels like loss is often preparation. What feels like pain is often a step towards something higher. But here is something important. The true strength was not in this journey itself. It was in what came before it. Because the honor of that moment did not create his strength. It revealed it. It showed that the patience, the trust, the endurance he had displayed through all those difficult moments were not unnoticed. They were leading somewhere. They were building something. Many people want the result without the process. They want relief without patience. They want elevation without enduring hardship. But this story shows that there is a sequence, there is a path. And that path includes moments that are difficult, moments that test you, moments that make you feel like nothing is changing. But something is always happening, even when you cannot see it. Allah was preparing him, strengthening him, and then honoring him at the right time. Not too early, not too late, exactly when it was meant to happen. And this is where the lesson becomes deeper. Because in your own life, you may not experience something like this journey, but you will experience hardship. You will face moments where things feel difficult, where people reject you, where the path ahead feels unclear. And in those moments, it is easy to think that nothing good is coming. But this story shows something different. It shows that after hardship, there is relief. After patience, there is reward. After enduring pain, there is something greater waiting, even if you cannot see it yet. The journey from the earth to the heavens was not just about honor. It was about showing that no struggle is wasted, and that every moment of patience carries a meaning beyond what you can imagine. But even after this, the real question remains: what does this mean for you? When you look at the life of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam during his hardest days, it is easy to admire his strength from a distance. It feels extraordinary, almost beyond human reach. The patience, the resilience, the ability to continue when everything was falling apart, it seems like something unique to him. But the deeper truth is this: the strength he showed is not something you are meant to only admire. It is something you are meant to learn from. Because the reality is, you also face tests. They may not look like him. You may not face public rejection on that level, or physical harm in the same way. But you experience your own forms of pressure, your own moments of loneliness, your own struggles that feel heavy in your heart, and in those moments the same question appears: how do you stay strong? Most people think strength means not feeling pain. They think it means staying unaffected, acting as if everything is fine, or pushing emotions aside. But that is not what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed. He felt pain. He experienced loss. He went through moments of deep difficulty. Yet he did not allow those moments to disconnect him from Allah. That is the difference. Real strength is not the absence of hardship. It is the ability to continue despite it. There is a powerful contrast here. You feel overwhelmed after a few difficult days. He endured years of rejection. You feel discouraged when people do not support you. He stood firm when entire communities turned against him. You struggle to stay consistent when life becomes uncomfortable. He remained consistent even when comfort was completely gone. This is not meant to make you feel small. It is meant to shift your perspective, because your strength is not as limited as you think. The problem is not that you lack strength. It is that you often look for it in the wrong places. You look for it in people, in circumstances, in things that can change at any moment. But real strength, the kind that does not break, comes from your connection with Allah. This is the same source that sustained him. When everything around him changed, that connection remained. When support disappeared, that connection stayed. When the path became difficult, that connection gave him the ability to keep moving forward. And this is available to you as well, not in the same scale, not in the same mission, but in the same principle. You have the ability to turn to Allah. You have the ability to build that connection. You have the ability to strengthen your heart in a way that is not dependent on what happens around you. But it requires a shift. It requires you to stop measuring your strength by how easy your life is, and start measuring it by how you respond when things are difficult. Do you give up, or do you continue? Do you complain, or do you turn to Allah? Do you allow hardship to weaken you, or do you let it shape you? Because every test carries an opportunity to grow, to reflect, to become stronger, not just outwardly, but internally. And this is where most people miss the point. They focus on changing their situation, but they ignore the chance to change themselves. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed that even in the hardest moments, there is a path forward, not an easy path, not a comfortable path, but a meaningful one, a path that leads to something greater, even if you cannot see it immediately. So the real question is not how strong he was. The real question is where your strength comes from, because if your strength comes from temporary things, it will fade when those things disappear. But if your strength comes from Allah, it will remain no matter what you face. And that is the kind of strength you don't realize you already have.